audition, Dillon Gabriel?
There's entertainers and there's competitors, and my job is to compete.
You don't know that competition exists everywhere? That's just a dumb, idiotic, entitled statement.
Whoa.
You want to play in front of empty stands? You want to play when nobody's watching? Good luck, bro. Hope you can play under duress and adversity, because it's coming your way after those comments.
Whoa.
Dillon Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field, people are competing. We compete here on television. You compete with radio shows. You compete on Wall Street. You compete on Madison Avenue. Everything, especially in America, as it pertains to a capitalistic society, involves competition. To the victor goes the spoils.
Gabriel thought he was pulling off some genius move with his cheap little stunt aimed at Shedeur Sanders, but instead, he wandered straight into Stephen A. Smith's demolition zone. This wasn't a clapback, this was a full-blown execution, and the weapon was a microphone. Picture this, Gabriel thinking he's a mastermind, plotting chess moves in his head. Only problem? He wasn't even on the chessboard. He was stuck playing checkers, fumbling pieces, while Stephen A. walked in and flipped the entire table over. That's how wild this showdown got. Stephen A. didn't just stroll in like it was another day at the office. He stormed that set like a man possessed, eyes locked in, carrying the kind of vengeance that could shake the walls. This wasn't commentary anymore. It was a flat-out ambush. Dillon Gabriel barely had a second to breathe before Stephen lined him up like a paper target at a shooting range. Gabriel thought tossing shade at Shedeur Sanders would get him clout, but instead that shade turned into a hurricane, and the eye of that storm was Stephen A. Smith. Now imagine Dillon puffing his chest out, smiling like he's the star attraction, like he just secured his ticket to the Hall of Fame, and then, boom! Stephen A. ripped that fantasy apart faster than snapping a breadstick at Olive Garden. In a single heartbeat, Dillon Gabriel went from goes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment, because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be QB number 2. But I know he was not talking about Shedeur Sanders. He was talking about the media. Here's the problem. You've now heightened the level of scrutiny coming your way because the media, including myself, heard what you said. Trying to look like a rising quarterback star to being a live exhibit of what happens when you poke the wrong bear. And here's the harsh reality. Nobody escapes clean after stepping into the ring with Stephen A. Smith when he's locked in that mode. You know the vibe, his voice rising pitch by pitch, every word sharper than the last, coming down like rapid-fire punches. Suddenly, it's not a sports debate anymore. It's an audio hurricane ripping through everything in its path. Gabriel probably thought he signed up for some friendly back and forth. Instead, he unknowingly enlisted in the army of regret. And the worst part, there are no discharge papers for that kind of service. The timing made it even uglier. Right now, Shedeur Sanders is on fire, stacking wins, stacking respect, flipping his own story in real time. He doesn't need Dillon buzzing around him like some little Pomeranian snapping for scraps. But Gabriel couldn't resist. He wanted his name dragged into Shedeur's spotlight like a random wedding guest who suddenly grabs the mic thinking it's karaoke night. And that, bad move. If Shedeur's rise is a blockbuster film, Dillon's role just got cut from the trailer, deleted from the credits, and erased from the bonus DVD extras. Stephen A. didn't just clap back. He threw a full-blown parade for Gabriel's irrelevance, marching a band down Main Street with a banner that screamed, "Case closed." Stephen A. doesn't argue, he performs. Every sentence he drops lands like a concrete block, stacking higher and higher until suddenly you're standing in the shadow of a skyscraper you can't escape. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel was still fumbling around with blueprints, trying to figure out which end was up, while Stephen had already finished the building, thrown a grand opening party, and cut the ribbon with a pair of golden scissors the size of a sword. Now let's be fair, Dillon Gabriel isn't a complete scrub. The guy can sling a football, command an offense, and show just enough flashes to make a desperate fan base believe. On paper, yeah, he's got some juice. But the second he tried to get slick about Shedeur Sanders, that was career suicide by microphone, plain and...
Both the Browns' rookie quarterbacks are being positioned, in their opinion, to start games this upcoming season. But how each quarterback is on a completely different developmental path for the summer here. So they said Shedeur Sanders is the one being, quote, carefully nurtured in a controlled environment, and Dillon Gabriel is being, quote, thrown directly into the fire against the team's best defenders. So that's where we transition over to this article that says why Dillon Gabriel is getting first-team reps while Shedeur Sanders waits his turn.
Simple. Stephen A. doesn't waste time on pretenders. He sniffs out insecurity like smoke, and Dillon was basically marinating in it. That's like rolling up to a 5-alarm blaze with a little water pistol. You're not saving the block. You're becoming the neighborhood clown. And the wildest part, Dillon really thought he was landing shots. He strutted in like he was stirring up drama, making headlines, stealing some spotlight for himself. Instead, he turned into the punchline of the week, roasted coast to coast while the cameras laughed in his face. And meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, he's probably somewhere doubled over, laughing his head off, not even breaking a sweat. This was the ultimate big brother flex. Shedeur Sanders didn't even have to lift a finger because Stephen A. stormed into the cafeteria, grabbed the bully by the collar, and body slammed him in front of the whole school. Now Shedeur gets to keep stacking highlights, building his brand, and locking down his spotlight, while Dillon Gabriel is left scrambling to explain why he got folded up like a rusty lawn chair on national TV for millions to see. And let's get this straight, Stephen A. didn't whisper his thoughts, not even close. He blasted them through a verbal megaphone so loud the whole country could hear. This wasn't a quiet little lecture in the corner. No, it was a full-blown spectacle, every syllable ringing like church bells in Dillon's head until the poor guy looked like he forgot how to breathe. By the end, Gabriel had the same blank expression as somebody who just got dunked on so hard they questioned if gravity even works anymore. But the comedy runs even deeper because Dillon actually thought he was slick enough to steal a little shine from Shedeur Sanders. You can almost picture him that morning standing in front of the mirror, psyching himself up, rehearsing one-liners, maybe even practicing that smug little grin like he was ready for his Hollywood moment. He thought this was going to be his big TV breakout, his headline-stealing debut. Shedeur Sanders isn't just any quarterback. He's a name, a legacy, a headline magnet with the kind of charisma that makes entire stadiums feel like blockbuster movie premieres. You don't steal light from that. You don't even try. If you do, you go down in flames like a moth flying straight into the sun. And that's exactly what happened here. The result? A coast-to-coast consensus that Dillon Gabriel just downgraded himself from quarterback to straight-up comic relief. And that's the brilliance of Stephen A. Smith. He doesn't just argue, he manufactures cultural moments that stick in people's brains. Dillon won't be remembered for touchdowns, clutch drives, or locker room speeches. Nope, he'll go down in history as the guy who thought he could dunk on Shedeur Sanders and instead got turned into a blooper reel that's already on a nationwide loop. Honestly, if Dillon's PR squad had even a shred of hustle, they'd already be printing shirts that say, Stephen A. roasted me live, and shipping them out by the truckload. Because, let's face it, that's the only thing marketable left in Gabriel's arsenal right now. He's not trending for stats, he's not trending for leadership, he's trending because...
And you don't let it infiltrate yourself. Will you share that with everybody at home?
Yeah, I think it's just part of it. You know, there's entertainers and there's competitors, and I totally understand that. And my job is to compete, and that's what I'm focused on doing. Of course, we're doing this mid-game, but you know, it's something that I'll get used to, and just want to be the best team that I can and create an environment where we can all go do our best work. That's all we want to do. You know, all you in this room are entertainers, and you have a job to do, and I respect it. Right? And I'm a competitor, so I have a job to do as well.
Stephen A. pulverized him into dust on live TV, and the replay button has been abused like it's the Super Bowl halftime show. Dillon brought this on himself. No excuses. The moral is simple. Never come for Shedeur Sanders when Stephen A. Smith is anywhere in the building. 1 second you're reaching for a cheap laugh, and the next you're starring in a How Not to Embarrass Yourself masterclass. Dillon Gabriel walked in cocky and strutting, but walked out stamped as a living cautionary tale. And the rest of us, we got front row seats to premium entertainment. But the internet? Oh, the internet never misses. The moment Stephen A. dropped that verbal missile, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and every group chat across the country lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July. People weren't just watching the takedown, they were reliving it, looping it, zooming in on Dillon's stunned face like it was a crime scene. Every twitch, every stutter, every second of him realizing he stepped into disaster got picked apart like evidence in an FBI lab. And the memes, instant classics. Dillon got plastered online as a cartoon character flattened into the pavement like Wile E. Coyote after another failed Roadrunner chase. Only this time, the Roadrunner was Shedeur Sanders, and the falling anvil, that was Stephen A's booming voice, dropping from the sky with no mercy. Fans weren't just laughing. They crowned Dillon Gabriel as the new unit of measurement for failure. He's the blueprint for don't ever try this again. Straight up, Dillon Gabriel's energy became a punchline of its own. People online weren't holding back, dropping lines like flop and classic Dillon move. Imagine stepping up to take your shot and bricking it so hard the crowd doesn't cheer. They burst out laughing. That's exactly the spectacle Dillon delivered, going from quarterback to full-blown meme in under 24 hours. That's not just a rough night. That's legacy erosion happening live in 4K. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders didn't even blink. No tweets, no posts, no clapbacks, nothing. Why would he waste energy swinging when Stephen A. Smith is out here dropping verbal nukes for free? Shedeur could just kick back, throw on some designer shades, sip something cold, and enjoy watching Dillon get roasted into fine dust by the entire internet. That's not luck. That's the art of passive victory. Winning by doing absolutely nothing while your rival implodes in front of the cameras. And Shedeur didn't just look unbothered, he looked untouchable. While Dillon trended as football's newest piñata, Shedeur's stock shot even higher without him lifting a finger. And here's the savage irony. This whole fiasco kicked off just because Shedeur's name carries that much weight. His name alone was enough to spark chaos, while Dillon volunteered to bomb on stage before the headliner even arrived. Dillon's fatal mistake? Thinking his little stunt made him look bold. In reality, it screamed desperate, and Stephen A. Smith smelled that desperation instantly.
Any interceptions when he was out there? You see anything like that? I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dillon Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother, but I'm going to go with Shedeur. You know, the pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him. He showed up out on the field. You know, he played better than expected, reminded everybody who he is and what he brings to the table. I liked it. You know, but that's not to throw any shade on Dillon Gabriel. He came out there, had a couple of mishaps, what have you, but ultimately he played well, and I give him credit where credit is due. But watching Shedeur move the offense or what have you, I thought that his performance was slightly better than Dillon Gabriel. That's just me, guys.
Circling like a shark that just caught the scent of blood in the water. But Stephen A. didn't just circle, he attacked. You could see it in the way he leaned forward, the fire blazing in his eyes, his voice climbing higher with each word until it felt like every syllable carried decades of pent-up frustration with quarterbacks trying too hard to force relevance. Dillon wasn't a rival, he was prey, and he wandered straight into the lion's den right at feeding time. The comedy gold, that split-second look on Dillon's face when he realized the whole vibe had flipped against him. He strutted in grinning, convinced he had just dropped the bar of the century. But by the time Stephen A. was done, he looked like a clueless student caught cheating on an open book test, confused, exposed, and wishing the ground would swallow him alive. That's the cruelty of live TV. You walk in thinking you're the star, only to realize you were just the setup for someone else's knockout punchline. And let's not forget, Stephen A. has been perfecting this for decades. The man is a surgeon with his voice, dismantling people with nothing but tone, tempo, and venom. Dillon stepping into that arena wasn't bold. It was reckless, like climbing into the boxing ring with a world champion when you've never thrown a punch in your life. And the wildest part? Shedeur's fans didn't even need to lift a finger. All Shedeur's fans had to do was point at Stephen A. and say, "Case closed." It was like hiring a lawyer so good, the judge doesn't even let the other side finish their opening statement. Dillon's case wasn't just weak. It got tossed out before the trial even started. And here's where it gets brutal. Dillon thought he was making himself part of the storyline. Instead, the storyline practically carved itself in stone. Stephen A. Smith destroys Dillon Gabriel. Not debates him, not challenges him. Destroys him in front of the whole nation. The headline didn't even need writing. Dillon's name stopped being tied to his own hot take and got stapled to his humiliation instead. That's the kind of branding you can't scrub off no matter how many touchdowns you throw.
Working with Flacco, Pickett, first teams, and Shedeur, like I said, often works with himself on a different field with the second and third string guys. Mary Kay Cabot, she said they are using mostly Dillon and Kenny Pickett to try to figure out what works in this offense and what doesn't. It's a new scheme. They have to throw some things out. They have to put some things in, and they're not putting all of that on Shedeur's plate as the fourth team quarterback. They're trying to get Kenny and Dillon possibly ready to play, maybe to be the starter and the backup possibly. And, during the pre-draft process, Shedeur Sanders, one of the big pluses in his column was most pro.
Later, it sticks like a scarlet letter, only louder, meaner, and 10 times more embarrassing. And don't think for a second his teammates didn't notice. Locker rooms are savage. You already know those guys are pulling out their phones, replaying the clip on loop, and clowning him every chance they get. Hey, Dillon, you still want to talk slick to Stephen A? That's the new locker room anthem, and Gabriel's got no comeback for it. At the end of the day, Dillon tried to rattle Shedeur Sanders and ended up rattling himself. That's the difference right there. The gap between a star with momentum and a guy scrambling for scraps. And the timing couldn't be more poetic. Shedeur Sanders is soaring, cementing himself as one of the most talked about quarterbacks in the game, while Dillon Gabriel is stuck clawing at headlines that only remind everyone of the day Stephen A. turned him into a national punchline. One man is rising fast, the other is slipping into free fall. And Stephen A. Smith drew that line in permanent markers so thick the whole world saw it. You couldn't script this better in Hollywood if you tried. And you know Stephen A. savored every single second of it. This is his arena, his stage, his spotlight. And when moments like this arrive, he doesn't just show up, he owns them. For Stephen A., it's never just about being right. It's about putting on a show while being right. Dillon didn't just get corrected, he got obliterated. Theatrically, dramatically, and mercilessly. It was sports commentary turned into late-night comedy, then flipped into a Shakespearean tragedy with Dillon Gabriel cast as the fool who didn't even realize he'd wandered into the wrong play. And that's the brutal punchline. Dillon's big gamble backfired so hard, it didn't just dent his reputation, it branded him with a whole new identity. He's no longer the quarterback scratching for recognition. Now he's the walking cautionary tale every rookie will hear whispered in locker rooms. Don't poke the wrong bear unless
Cleveland Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders, and Dillon Gabriel, both fighting for a position on the Cleveland Browns depth chart at quarterback. Now, what I find interesting here was last week, Shedeur Sanders had an opportunity to play in the preseason. He did well, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And this week, Dillon Gabriel had an opportunity to play as well. He had an interception that was ran back for a touchdown, and he had a fumble in which the team lost the ball a second time.
unless you want to end up like Dillon Gabriel. His name is stamped in sports history now. Not for touchdowns, not for highlight reels, but as the guy Stephen A. Smith turned into a national blooper reel. The fallout was instant. Headlines didn't say Dillon Gabriel made a bold statement. They screamed, Stephen A. destroys Dillon Gabriel. And once that sticks, Gabriel clips flooded timelines, memes spread like wildfire, and suddenly Dillon wasn't controlling the conversation. He was the conversation, and not in the way he dreamed. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders didn't even twitch. He didn't need to. His brand only grew stronger, his name only shined brighter, while Dillon burned out in real time. Shedeur came out looking like the untouchable star, the golden prince of prime time, while Dillon looked like the crash test dummy that proved why you never step into Stephen A.'s crosshairs unprepared. What we witnessed wasn't just a takedown, it was a televised career lesson, a showcase of what happens when shaky confidence collides headfirst with brutal reality. And reality always has the louder microphone. Dillon thought he'd be remembered for his words, but instead, he'll be remembered for his silence. The silence that came after Stephen A. shut him down so completely, the air in the room changed. So here's the question. Was this the harshest takedown Stephen A. has delivered in years, or was Dillon just the wrong guy at the wrong time? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you in the next one. Because the way Stephen A. raised his voice 3 octaves higher wasn't just heated commentary, it was theater. A full-on performance that turned Dillon Gabriel into
Interviewed, he said something I found interesting, which I thought was a shot at his fellow teammate. He said, some people are entertainers and others are competitors. I see myself as a competitor. I thought that was a stray he was trying to throw at his fellow teammate Shedeur. And one thing I can tell you in my short lifespan of 47 going on 48 years, that context, words, and body language matter. More importantly than that, you don't get more light when you try to
a walking meme factory on live TV. Every word Dillon tried to squeeze into the mix evaporated like smoke, while Stephen A.'s takedown burned itself into the collective memory forever. And that's the curse of chasing someone else's shine. You don't just fail, you get remembered for failing. Dillon thought he was climbing Shedeur's mountain, reaching for a little spotlight of his own. Instead, he got buried alive under the avalanche Stephen A. unleashed. And the wildest part? That avalanche isn't stopping. It's going to echo through highlight reels, flood group chats, and live forever in meme culture for years to come. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share this with your crew. Drop your takes below in the comments, and trust me, I'll see you on the next one, because the drama in this league never sleeps.